You're listening to the Strong and Capable podcast with your host, Brigette Heller.
Hey, welcome to this season of the Strong and Capable podcast, season 4, episode 1, people. We are here talking about how to break the mold this season. It's going to be off the hook. I am so excited about the interviews and the people that we're bringing to the show. Some of them I was like, no way, they'll never say yes. Totally said yes. I cannot wait for the conversations that has happened and are happening that you will get to hear. So the first thing I wanted to start with is break the mold. What does that even mean? Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? Breaking the mold started for me about 4 months ago. The idea came into my mind. And then when I went on my 12-hour walk, I wrote out some ideas of what does break the mold look like? Why do we even need to? So in my church, we have callings. And in these callings, they're not really a volunteer thing. It's kind of the pastor or bishop. He calls you and he says, hey, I have this thing I need you to do. And you could be in there for 6 years in this position within our church. And so I have had many callings, many leadership callings, many taking care of the little kids, doing the little things. I've been all over the place. But here's what has been consistent about this. Every single time my pastor calls me and says, Brigette, I need you to do this. Do you know what he says with it? He says, we need a culture shift, and I feel like you're the person to do it. So essentially, I am really good at shaking things up and taking down the boundaries and walls that people have built. But I want to tell you about a specific time that I was called to be in charge of the activities for the women in my church. In my first meeting, I was a young mom and my little kiddos, and I was so excited because I am an event planner. I'm good at activities. And so I was excited because I got to pour into these ladies and just really create fun events for them. And the person who trained me sat me down and she said, you will not ever do ham for food. You will not ever do casseroles. You will only spend, I think it was like $100 for the big meals to feed over 100 people. Yeah, not going to happen. You will never, she had a list of probably 50 things, and they were all so very wildly specific. And they were cultural things that had developed over time for this congregation. And they were also preferences of her specifically. And I remember when she left thinking, well, I'm doing none of that. None of that. And yet I have to respect these people because this is their culture. And when you go and just totally, rip up a culture, that hurts people. It's uncomfortable. We like to know how life is going. We like to predict it. And so when someone comes and rips up our culture and our way of being, it does not feel good. And unless there's a purpose behind it, we don't get behind that person. They become the enemy, not the culture, the person. Hear me say this, those who are culture warriors. If you go and disrespect a culture by throwing it out completely with anger, you become the enemy. You don't break a mold that way. In fact, they tighten onto their mold. They're like, no. This mold is safety for me. So if you want to change culture, you have to first respect it, understand it, and then do things from a heart with purpose. So when I went to change things, I thought about what are they comfortable with? What's the tiny shift I can make that will make them still feel comfortable, but that can actually serve them better? So do you see where my heart's coming from? My heart was from serving, from loving, from teaching, not from like, you guys are stupid, I'm going to change it. So when you change a culture, you're helping other people break the mold. But you cannot do that until you break the mold for yourself. And that is what we're talking about today. You cannot change and impact the world the way you want to until you've first done it for yourself. And that's going to come up in the interviews already. The interviews I've done, people are talking about that. Well, first I had to heal myself. First I had to fix myself. And then I was able to do this incredible thing for the world, give this incredible service. So the first place you have to start with is yourself. Now, this is hard because we go through hard things. And when we go through hard things, just like I was talking about with the congregation and that shift, if I had just gone in there and said, you guys are stupid, they would have held on to those cultural things that were unhealthy even tighter. So for yourself, it's the same way. You go through hard things. And when you go through hard things, you hold on tightly to the things you know. Or it's so hard that you completely release it. So all the victory stories you hear around a lot of motivational speakers, but it's they went through something so dramatic that they had no idea any longer who they were on any level. And because of that, they released themselves from the cage of expectation, the cage of the cage that they had built around themselves. And because they had released themselves from this, now they were free to create, free to connect, free to step into who they were. When you break the mold, you get to be who you are. But hardships and moments of uncomfortableness tend to make us cling on tighter to that mold because we desperately just want to feel safe and comfortable. And the cage and the mold is the devil we know. And so we like it and we stick with it. So know this, that to break the mold, you have to know who you are fully. Know who you are. We talk about this all the time. Know who you are. And then the next thing is, and the only way to actually, I'm going to backtrack. The only way to know who you are first is to release the shame. Release the stories that you are telling yourself, the things that are keeping you there, right? So first you have to say, I no longer carry this shame. I am no longer available to carry this shame. I no longer hold on to this. For me, one of the ones I had to release to break my own mold was I'm not good enough. It will never be good enough. I'm only loved if I'm good enough, and I can't be good enough. I had to release that. You will have thought tracks running through your head. It's why I'm passionate about the Fresh View Journal that is releasing next week. I'm passionate about it because until you find those thought tracks of shame and get rid of them, you can't break your own mold. Okay? So you got to break your own mold. Sometimes there is one exception. I want to note the one exception is when you do it for others. You often see mothers break the mold in service to their children, because they are so passionate about seeing that person successful that they will do anything it takes to make it happen, including break themselves out of their own cage. So that's the first thing is you have to release the shame. You have to know who you are. Breaking the mold is also not about sticking up the middle finger to the world. As I talked about earlier, I could have gone in and said, you ladies are stupid. I'm not doing this. I didn't. Because even though inside I was frustrated, I also understood they were doing the best they could. Everyone in the world is doing the best they can to be the best person they can. And some people are honestly doing a better job than others. Let's face it. But we don't know their story or why. Maybe they're not doing a very good job because they had a horrible traumatic childhood. Or maybe the opposite. They had nothing happen to them their whole childhood. So they don't understand reality enough to be the good human they need to be. That happens too. So you don't know where they're coming from or why they don't have the skills to be the person that you want them to be. But that's their journey, not yours. And you have to release that too. Okay. So we break the mold for ourselves. We release taking on any responsibility for anyone else's journey. And then we're going to do something new. If you want something new in your life, you have to do it differently than you've been doing it. Because the way you've been doing it isn't working, right? You're still in your mold. Or maybe you're like, I'm like a little baby chick and I'm cracking out. I can feel it. Sometimes that's how I feel. I was like, I'm stretching. I'm going to get out of this little cage here. But it's hard. Breaking the mold isn't easy, just like the baby chick. I was explaining that to my husband the other day. He did not grow up on a farm and I did. But I told him, I said, a baby chick has to work to get out of their own shell. And when they do that, they build the muscles and all the things they need to be a strong chicken. If I were to try and help them break out of their shell, they wouldn't develop the things they need and they would die. And he's like, what? Yes, this is science. So breaking the mold is science, people. You have to break your mold or it's not about physically, though it might be for you. It might be physically, it might be mentally, it might be spiritually. If you do not break the mold of where you currently are, then yeah, you die. You got to get out of it. And it won't be easy and it won't be glorious and beautiful the way that Instagram makes it look or TikTok. But if you break the mold, you become something new and it's beautiful and you are stronger for it. So break the mold. Not the analogy I planned on telling today. That's fine. Okay. So here's an exercise. I'm going to keep this episode super short. I'm going to keep this episode super short because really what I want you to get the idea of is that where you are currently is not where you're meant to be. And where you're meant to be is maybe going to take a little bit of fresh view building to get there. But when you do it, that's when you impact. That's really when you impact the world. Really. For me, breaking the mold looks like dancing on Instagram. I know that's so stupid, but it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage. It takes for speaking up my voice, speaking up, speaking out, and speaking up using my voice. It's hard. It was hard for me. I've now broken out of that shell. It's no longer hard. I cannot stop this voice. It just keeps talking and talking and talking. I now have the new problem of learning when to stop the voice and listen. I listened for my whole life. I thought I had that skill down, but really I didn't. What I had down was suppressing my voice. Now that I'm speaking out, I actually have to learn the real skill of listening. So that's what's also crazy about when you break out of the cage that you've built around yourself, these ideas like I had built, I'm shy. I'm shy. I'm anxious. So it's okay if I stay here quietly because I'm shy. Guys, I'm not shy. I do like to read a room first before I just go speaking, but I can do that pretty quickly sometimes. And I also like to engage, as learned, in real conversation. And so if that's not happening, it's okay. I don't have to talk. But I had to break out of my I'm shy mold to learn those things about myself. So the more you break your own mold, the more you're willing to consider things differently and not just consider it, but then take intentional action to do something about it, the more you're breaking free of that cage, that shell, and becoming the person who prepares to grow the feathers, have the wings, and fly. Now, chickens don't fly very far, but they can fly. So if you're a chicken, it's okay. Break out of your shell. You're going to go somewhere. Okay, so here's the exercise I got for you today. I'm going to focus on this a lot, that when it's just me and you talking, that there are real actionable items for you because I want you to be able to take the next steps, not just have a little pep talk. So here is it. I want you to sit down and write for 1 minute, just the things that you want to change in life. What are the things? I wish I had a cleaner house. I wish that I could actually get a job I liked. I wish this relationship would improve or go away or, right? Life is not easy and there are things we wish we could change. In fact, I, on a very personal note, without details, have had some struggles this week. And as I was working through those struggles, and I turned to this book from my 12-hour walk, and I was looking at an example. And for whatever reason, 2 months ago, when I went on this walk, the example I used of why you need a fresh view was the exact thing that's happening in my life right now. Now, 2 months ago, this wasn't an issue for me. It was a strange foreshadow and kind of freaky, honestly. But today I read my words of how to create a fresh view on this problem. And it was shocking. And so now I have to take intentional action to do something about it. So the first thing you're going to do is write down the things you wish you could change. The next thing you're going to do is what's stopping you. Really? What's stopping you? If you are struggling in a relationship, what's stopping you from healing it? What's stopping you from changing the way you approach the situation? And maybe you're like, there's just no way to. There's never no way to do something. There's always a way. Sometimes it's letting go, but most times it's not. Most times it's a change in how we communicate, honestly. Most times it's a change in the condition of our heart and how we're reacting. And you're mad at someone. I've been in phases like this with my kids where I was so frustrated with them that then everything they did was stupid and frustrating and how dare they? That's not their problem. That's my problem. So when I understood it was my problem, and then I was like, okay, what do I need to do then to fix this problem? For me, it turned out to be retreats. I needed to get away from my home and build myself again, know who you are, and do some counseling. And then when I came back, I was a better person, and then they weren't bugging me. And because I responded differently, they responded differently. So fresh views create new actions, which then receive new reactions. Hear that? A fresh view gives you a new action, and then you're going to get a different reaction. If you're stuck, if you're frustrated in the things you wish you could change, you've got to create a fresh view of that thing or you won't change it. If you're like, there's just no way, then I want you to stop. We're not going to complete this exercise right now. And I want you to meditate / think / ponder, whatever word you use. Let your mind circulate on one thing, pick one thing, and say, could there be any other way? If your house is nasty, could there be any other way to get it clean? What could that look like other than the traditional ways that you're aware of? And if you're like, well, I got no fresh ideas, I only know what I know. Okay. So there's 2 sources to go to. God, you need to be praying and saying, is there any other way? And education yourself. Yep. No, educate yourselves. Seriously, YouTube is phenomenal. There are so many women who have conquered the clean house. So find a few and find their systems and see if any of them work for you. Right? There are ways to do what we need done. Sometimes it might be, I'm going to pick up 2 extra shifts and pay someone to come clean my house once a week. Or I'm going to sell this and this and this so that if I just had someone in once a quarter do a deep cleaning, then I could maintain the rest. There are so many ways to approach a problem and get the things that we desire. But instead, because we're in this cage, this mold, we only see this one. You have to mentally break the mold to seize the possibilities. And the journey becomes the teacher. And every time we're taught by the journey, then the next section of our journey becomes a little more exciting and we feel a little bit more capable. And then, because the journey's getting longer and longer, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, we're getting stronger. And it's exciting. So when you want to be strong and capable, it's first looking at what you're capable of and then figuring out how to become capable of what you want. And through that process, you become strong. You don't usually start strong. We become strong. So, again, like the chicken, they become strong by breaking through the cage, by breaking the mold. So, my friends, whether you are a culture warrior out to change the world, or whether you are out to change your own life, or your home, or your workplace, whatever it is that you are out to, remember to free yourself first of the cage so that then you can free others. But do it without shame, do it with kindness and compassion and love, and do it in a way. I just want empower yourself. Don't beat up yourself. I guess that's the big thing. However you go about this journey, just be so, so, so full of grace. Because think about the baby chicken. They're kind of ugly especially when they're breaking out and they're weak and all the things. But then after the journey is done, within a very, very short time period, cutest things on earth. And they bring joy and laughter and light. I've been in a classroom full of children sitting in a circle just watching that duck come to life and toddle around the room and peep. And the joy that duck brings or that chicken brings is amazing. So you don't have to be huge and big and all the things to impact so much. Just be you. And I guess one more example, because I'm all about examples, and I hope you see yourself in some of these examples. I am going to my grandma's 90th birthday this weekend. And you want to talk about someone who's impacted a lot. She had 8 kids who all pretty much had like 8 kids. There's a lot of grandkids, and now we're all having kids. She has a huge family. Over 100 people are coming to this party. She broke a mold in her own life by doing things her own way. She's a farmer. She's still living on her own, still taking care of herself. She's feisty. She didn't do things the way that people tell her she should. She travels. She's cool. She was strong and capable every day raising that family. So there's one person living their life and impacting hundreds of people. Now, let me tell you about another. When I go to visit my grandma, I also always stop by my sister's headstone where she's buried. And I was thinking today, someone who couldn't walk, who couldn't talk, who couldn't hear, who was brilliant of mind but could not express it except for in very small ways. Someone like that changed me. She made me break my mold. I had to see the world different. I had to love different. I had to accept hard things different. I had to accept loss. My mold and understanding of the world was broken in every way because of her. And because of that, this podcast exists. The classes I teach exist. Every group I've ever done exists. The book that will be out someday exists. She did not look like any other mold. She had already broken it. And because of that, she helped me become a different person. So please understand, whoever you are, whatever mold that you're trying to break out of, when you become yourself fully, when you know who you are and just own it, whatever that looks like, you impact others for good. You never know when your story and the way you live your life will be the thing that transforms someone else for the rest of theirs. You cannot be an impactor or an influencer for good within the safety of your own cage. So be kind to yourself. Know that you look nothing like anybody else and they're perfect. And go break the mold. You got this. You are so very strong and capable. One more thing. If you like this podcast, please share it. Please, please share it. This is the season of growth for me. So I'm asking you, if something in this message impacted you, please share it on your social media. Please share it to your friends. Because we are going to have great conversations. And if this is impacting you, it can impact them. And I don't want anyone who's ready to do good and be loved by themselves, by others, and by God. Anyone who's ready for that love to fill their life, I don't want them to miss it. So please share the podcast. And on that note, never forget, friends, that you are strong and capable. You got this.